Namaste. Welcome, everybody. Let's start with a short moment of centeredness in the heart, of self-remembrance. So please close your eyes. Relaxation. We bring the awareness in the middle of the chest, a little to the right. A feeling of coming back home in the center. The pure I feeling. Keeping the awareness of the heart. We gently open the eyes, remembering the beauty of the pure presence, this inner child. And I would like to wish you a happy anniversary for this eternal inner child on this day, the Child Day. We'll continue our online course on self-awareness. Arnaud already presented the topics of this night, of this satsang. All of them are actually subtopics of this spiritual centeredness and psychological flexibility. How we can keep this centeredness in our being while there is constant freedom and flexibility at the level of our soul, at the level of our psyche. And we will start reminding you there is nothing critical, there is nothing urgent except self-awareness. This is the reason for which we are studying all these topics. And in order to create a continuity, I will remind you some of the topics we discussed last time. First was a little remembrance of the essential point regarding understanding, which is always valid, is a constant remembrance. And I said that here, the point is not to understand what I'm saying, because this seems usually the main point of communication. Now, communication has another purpose, a completely different purpose. To point to this who, to this me, who is the one who understands this, to whom this understanding is happening. Who is the one in such thoughts, beliefs, insights appear? And all what I'm going to speak in all this course, in all these teachings, is about this constant remembrance, vigilance of the witness of all this. We spoke last time also about that secret of happiness revealed by Nisargadatta Maharaj, not to just look for pain or run from pain and look for pleasure, but he said, try the other way, detach, indifferent from pain and pleasure, neither asking nor refusing, give all your attention to the level on which the I am is timelessly present. And I'm repeating this again and again because this is an essential teaching which can be applied practically. We also spoke about the difference between like and love, that like is at the periphery, it's a phenomenal thing, like and dislike, while love is more of an attribute of the center. But even for like in itself and like and dislike in themselves are not a cause of limitation. For example, in Tantra, the feeling is not denied. It is just liberated from that chain of dependent origination, as Buddha named. So freed from clinging, craving. This is the problem, not the like in itself. You can appreciate art, you can like something, a food or so. It's about not clinging, about craving. This is what creates the problems. And still, we spoke about the fact that in the stillness of our being, in that center, love is anytime available, is not just a mood. As Rumi said, love is the only constant in the universe. This relativity of personal feelings is not true for pure love. We spoke also about the pain and the suffering brought by violent decisions and how people can be easily triggered by some emotions or traumas in the absence of this centeredness. Now we will continue to speak about this spiritual centeredness and psychological flexibility, how to diminish this swing, this oscillation between yes, it's either yes or not in our life. And I would like to start with a beautiful story of a meeting between a great philosopher, Averroes, Ibn Rushd, a big philosopher, and a great mystic, Ibn Arabi. This story is about this, again, about this going beyond duality by integrating the yes and no together. And this Ibn Arabi, this story happened in the 12th century, in the 12th century in Spain. Ibn Arabi was a great philosopher, the chief judge of Seville in Spain. He is now known, even now, Averroes, because of his famous commentaries on Aristotle, a very appreciated and respected figure. But Ibn Arabi was a famous mystic, a poet, scholar, philosopher, one of the most famous of the Muslim world. He was considered a saint. He was renowned among the Sufis by the name Al-Sheikh Al-Akbar, which means the greatest sheikh. In Sufism, the word sheikh is used to represent a master, a protector, and a friend of God. So the greatest friend of God. This would be the name for Ibn Arabi. But the story is about the earliest time of Ibn Arabi, the time when he was just a young boy. So the story goes like this. He said, I spent the day in Cordoba at the house of Ibn Arabi. He had expressed a desire to meet me in person since he had heard of certain revelations I had received while in retreat and showed considerable astonishment concerning them. So as a parenthesis, Ibn Arabi had a solitary retreat in which he had profound revelations, visions of God. And Averroes was very interested in this. And Ibn Arabi continues to say, in consequence, my father, who was one of his closest friends, took me with him in order to give Averroes the opportunity of making my acquaintance. I was, Ibn Arabi said, at that time a beardless youth. As I entered the house, the philosopher rose to greet me with all the signs of friendliness and affection and embraced me. Then he said to me, yes, and showed pleasure on seeing that I had understood him. I, on the opposite hand, being aware of the motive of his pleasure, replied, no. Upon this, Averroes drew back from me, his color changed, and he seemed to doubt what he had thought of me. He then put me the following question: what solution have you found as a result of mystical illumination and divine inspiration? Does it coincide with what is arrived at by speculative thought, so by philosophy? Does this coincide? And Ibn Arabi answered, yes and no. Yes and no. Between the yes and the no, the spirits take their flight beyond matter, and the next detach themselves from their bodies, suggesting metaphorically this transcendence of the rational mind. At this, Averroes became pale. I saw him tremble as he muttered the formula, there is no power save from God. This was because he understood my allusion, Ibn Arabi said. He was one of the greatest masters of reflection and rational consideration. He thanked God and that in his own time he had seen someone who had entered into the retreat ignorant. So referring to himself, to Ibn Arabi, he entered in a retreat ignorant and had come out of this without illuminated, without study, discussion, or reading. In reality, Ibn Arabi was neither naive nor an unlettered mystic. He was and became later on in his life very well versed in philosophical thinking. But the real difference between Averroes and Ibn Arabi lays in this way in which the knowledge is reached. It's either through reflective thinking, through rational thinking, in which it is still either yes or no, this rational dualistic mentality, or by mystical insight, as in the case of Ibn Arabi, which is a holistic, the very definition of jnana yoga, this non-dual knowledge, a domain of yes and no together, yes and no together, in which duality is not excluded but integrated. And this was visually depicted in a second imaginary meeting between Averroes and Ibn Arabi, a vision of Ibn Arabi in which he said, a thin veil separated me and him in such a way that I was able to see him while he was unable to see me and ignorant of my presence. He was so absorbed that he paid no attention to me, and I said to myself, he is not destined to follow the same path as me. This image Ibn Arabi describes, this incapacity to access a deeper, a sacred realm, reminds me of a quote I loved, and this quote impressed me deeply long time ago, and then I couldn't find it. It was an affirmation I found in a book of Hazrat Inayat Khan. And then much later, I found it again. I didn't remember exactly the quote, but it was like an echo of subtle calling that was there for many, many years. So the quote goes like this: many seem wide awake to life without the life outside, but asleep to the life within. And though the chamber of their heart is continually visited by the hosts of heaven, they do not know their own heart. They are not there. So this sense of being visited by the hosts of heaven, this sense of having a beautiful, constant activity of wonderment in your heart, is what also Ibn Arabi suggested. And this was what was missing for Averroes. The particular quality of Ibn Arabi teachings, which appears in the writings of him and the writings of many, many mystics, is this constant interplay of this paradox, which appears also in the Zen Quants, for example, in the Zen riddles, in which the mind is forced, the rational mind is forced to go that limit, to go beyond this dualistic domain, so that the truth can be seen without limitation. The awakening then is happening when that veil is taken away. In this play of yes and no together, in this play of integration, the world is not static anymore. It's like a dynamic theater of the divine manifestation, to be seen constantly with wonderment. And every movement in cosmos is essentially a movement in love of God. As Ibn Arabi used to say, it is simultaneously he and not he. Just like the image of a person in a mirror. So you look in a mirror and it's you and not you. The same is with the whole world, with the whole existence, is you and not you together. You can feel it right now. And this is a practice. A practice. You can look in a mirror like this. You look and you are not. And then you can look in a mirror of the whole cosmos. It's not separation. You are and you are not. In this diversity, of course, it's a separation between your body and the rest. But deeper, everything is the celebration of the same you. And you can feel it. Since I mentioned about this beautiful story of the meeting between Averroes and Ibn Arabi, there is another story related to the death of Averroes, which it's worth to be mentioned because it points to a symbolical, ironical integration, a need for balance in life as in death. So an equilibrium without which not even the most common things are possible. It is said that at the end of 12th century, Averroes died, so the philosopher died in Marrakesh, and a mule carried his remains back to his native Cordoba in Spain. The burden of his corpse being balanced by the weight of his philosophical writings. Therefore, his writings were very useful in bringing a balance to his corpse on the back of the mule. A very beautiful image. And then also the mule being the offspring of a male donkey and a female horse is also a symbol of this, of a kind of integration. No? And life is like this, ironical and playful. Everywhere you can find signs, just we need to be available to see them beyond the veil of blindness which stays in our soul. So I'm going to speak now about taking decisions and how we can learn to get out of our limited point of view. For people who are just caught in this cycle of like and dislike, raga, dvesha, in the yogic tradition, there is not even the other option. If I was always in this yes option, how can be no, the other option, the opposite option, acknowledged, or vice versa? Or we may live constantly just in a confusion, not being able to decide. Therefore, the first step of acknowledging or taking correct decision would be to be aware of the other part, which involves self-observation. Self-observation, as I said, is this self-attention. It's an attention of ourselves at the psychological level. You observe your reactions, emotions, beliefs, and thus acquire gradually the capacity of a personal psychological presence. So you are not just taken by whatever is happening there, emotions and so on. You start observing, and because of this, you are in a kind of control, which is still, as I said, just the first stage, because is still psychological, is still personal, but is a first step towards this freedom. Only in this way, for example, in a conflict, in a relationship, we can consider and start to embrace the perspective of the other, no? And start getting a taste of neutrality. So this would be the first step. Then, further than this, there is a second phase in which the other is not separate, is not perceived as something that is outside of you. And thus, it starts to grow a sense of oneness. When the one you hurt is yourself, when the one you love is yourself, we can rise beyond this either yes or no and see the beauty and complexity of yes and no together. This perspective of a conscious embracing center, a conscious embracing presence. But this, of course, is done in humbleness. You are not anymore the old you, the old personality. That veil was taken from you. Therefore, first we develop the practice of acknowledging the extremes, being aware of the extremes generated in our life by the limited philosophy of either yes or no. And this is a practice to be explored. It's not abstract. You always consider the other possibility. You always consider that, but in an integrative way. Then we learn and deepen the art of remaining close to the center, which makes the spiritual journey not some kind of personal excitement, but a beautiful act of attention, and more specifically, an act of self-awareness happening in our normal everyday life. So we become more self-aware, more self-aware. Now we are coming, so now I just presenting the frame in which the decisions can happen practically. So when we don't take a strong position of identification with a perspective, a belief, or a thing, we are open. And this is the beauty of the time when we learn things, of the time when we are just seeing in spontaneity all that exists. This is what in the Zen tradition would be named the beginner's mind. We are like a child. Again, this is the child day, and it's good to be honored, to be remembered this. Taking strong positions, we identified with this opinion, and this creates rigidity, seriousness, and therefore strong problems appear in our mind because we hold on things, we grasp all these things. In the thinking domain, there is always a distinction between oneness and diversity. But in the actual situation of life, diversity and unity are integrated and not divided. The unity is the core of diversity. You find that sense of oneness in any imperfection, in any dualistic option. That's why it's important not to identify with this dualistic tendency, not to be dualistic. So we can even say that for an adept of jnana yoga, of this yoga of knowledge, but also for an adept of bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion and love, and also for an adept of karma yoga, a yoga of conscious action, the more crucial attitude, the most crucial attitude would be to not be dualistic, because this would contradict with the very essence of yoga teachings. Even though in classical yoga or in Samkhya philosophy, some people tend to define these teachings as dualistic, as a separation between Purusha and Prakriti, even there is a coherence in seeing the same essence of nature. And this is what I'm speaking about. We'll not go now into such details, but also there, this importance of not being splitted, but being centered and integrative. Now, the key is that ultimately, in taking a decision, it is not so relevant to have a comprehensive theoretical understanding of the spiritual teachings. What is much more important is a strong faith, a strong trust in this centeredness, in this freedom of presence, a faith in the actuality of teachings. They are applied when we are able to integrate naturally what seems opposite in our life. So when we are able to have a natural integration of whatever seems to be splitting ourselves, then we feel that we are not just a wave, not just the personality, but we are the ocean, Shiva, the universal. Therefore, the centeredness. The centeredness is essentially an expression of the trust in the yoga path. And this is very well reflected when we have to take some decisions in life. Instead of being tormented by either yes or no, should I do this or should I do that? Ask who is actually taking such a decision. Does God, Shiva, the absolute, the pure consciousness, or no matter how you want to name it, does God take decisions? Does life in its totality take decisions? With this intuition, remembrance, a sense of detachment and equanimity comes, in which any choice, judgment, and decision is taken in wisdom, not reactivity. For example, we tend to say about people who lost an important opportunity in their life that they lost their train. We have the image of a person staying indefinitely in a train station because that person lost her or his train. This is the very image of stagnation. But if this model of the lost train may be true from the perspective of samsara, of the petty circumstances, yes, I had a chance and now I just lost it, it is not true from a spiritual point of view, because you can take this train now. You can take this train now, which means you can be present. And this is the essential decision. We can decide to be conscious or not. This is the main decision. The other are just secondary and are consequences of this, because it is about acting and living in dream or not. So nobody stops you but yourself. There is a beautiful, a famous novel of Franz Kafka, The Trial, which contains a very insightful parable there before the law. A man seeks the law and wishes to gain entry to the law through an open doorway. No? Doorway, such a beautiful symbol, and I hope you remember that conscious entering the doorways. So he is wanting to access the law through that. But the problem is that there is a doorkeeper there at the door, which tells the man that he cannot go through that at the present time. So the doorkeeper is saying that the man cannot go for the moment. That is possible, but not for now. And the man waits by the door for years and years and tries many things. He tries even to bribe the doorkeeper and so on, until the man is about to die. Right before his death, an insight comes to him. He asks the doorkeeper why, even though everyone seeks the law, no one else has come in all these years there. And the doorkeeper answers, no one else came here because no one else could ever be admitted here, since this gate was made only for you. Nobody stops you but yourself. And when we understand this, we realize that it's not about some special chance lost in the past. It is not even about a specific decision of doing this or that. It is about the decision of being you, the decision of waking up and not staying in dreams anymore. It is only from this center, from the heart, that such decision for freedom is taken. And in our times, this is so actual, because you can ask, what can I do in all this situation? What can I do? You can do a lot by choosing to be present. And there you understand that it's not even about taking a circumstantial personal decision anymore, or this is not the main thing. Of course, this doesn't mean that a decision at a certain point is not needed, and is sometimes needed in a very clear and firm way. but from where that decision is taken, who takes that decision. This is the most important. So it's not about taking the decision itself, but about entering a flow in a continuous surge of trust, of a trust in life, of a trust in the present moment, of a trust in you. There are in our life moments of emotional intensity in which these waters of life pass like through a steep canyon, turmoils, agitation, but it is always about who is taking the decision, not the decision itself. I saw people in distress asking me what to do in many circumstances. They would ask, for example, and this is happening often, if they should extend the retreat from 3 days to 10 days, a silent meditation retreat. They come to the end of the 3 day and then they had some old plans and then they would want to continue to stay and continue to be in the retreat. But then there would be some difficulties, and this is bringing a lot of doubts. Or they ask if they should remain in the Hridaya center longer or rather take for a while a job which just appeared as an opportunity. I see the need to take such decisions very relative and insignificant. I repeat, I consider this insignificant because in the reality, the real decision we need to take is to understand this zooming out attitude, the need to not be dualistic, the need to integrate all that is there, to see ourselves not just lost in the agitation of the moment, but to look from a wider perspective. So it's not in the end about going now or later in a retreat or following the life in an ashram or so. So if I'm asked what to choose, I would say choose the truth. It is about a lifetime commitment to truth, to life, to love, to self-awareness, to the present moment. So this would be the relevant decision. If we take it, adversities, difficult circumstances are not and cannot be obstacles in our life. We are free because the truth and love, the center, God, is carrying you. I remember once it happened to hear something that seemed to me like a supra-realistic dialogue. A woman simply asked a man to join her to see the sunset somewhere in Mazunte in Punta Cometa, a very beautiful place where the nature is fascinating. And the man started thinking, well, I'm not so sure because, you know, I have a problem. I don't know to say no to people. I have this issue, but on the other hand, now I feel like saying yes, but I'm not very sure, and I don't know what to do. No, and staying and thinking like this. Come on, life is so simple. Yes or no. You can say, well, I'll not go. I'm lazy. I don't want to go, or I will go. It's not so relevant what you choose. What is relevant is to be present. Because in that presence, you'll be happy going at the sunset to see the sunset, or being by yourself. Both will bring happiness, fulfillment. Because again, this life is not about choices. This life is about integration, is about being present. There is a very beautiful quote of a great Zen master, Shunryu Suzuki. He said, "Enjoy your problems." Remember this. Enjoy your problems. How would this be possible? It is totally possible. Please believe me, it is possible, but only if you have already made that essential decision. Only if you decided to come again and again and stay in the center. It's a constant flow there. It's not that you will stay there forever and the dynamic of life. It's a dynamic coming back to the center in the heart. And trust this. More than this, you are not really separate from such decision. You are that trust. You are that trust from which the decision flows. It is true that sometimes we need a big shock in order to wake up. And this is another paradox of life, of this yes and no together. Even though it is so easy and natural, we may need first to be pushed hard or shocked. As a great Sufi poet and mystic Al-Ghazali said, men have to be driven into paradise with whips. Men have to be driven into paradise with whips. It happens sometimes, but then with this centeredness, you start enjoying your problems. And I remind you, we are speaking about decisions, but essentially it's about self-remembrance, about self-awareness. Me, here, now. So deeper is about deciding essentially who we are. Just trusting the center, the life. And from that reference point, from that center, just allow everything flow, because it will flow in good direction. Trust this. And you are smiling, no matter what is happening. You are guided by this, like in an inner call, because it's like this. There is a beautiful story of Ramana Maharshi, in which, regarding Ramana Maharshi, a man went to him and asked if he should become a sannyasi, a renunciator. Of course, this would be a very important question in the decision, important decision in the life of a human being, and asking your master, as your spiritual master, about this would seem very legitimate, yes? But Ramana simply answered, if you really wanted this, you wouldn't have come to ask me. So there is no doubt when you are really centered in the heart. If I stay, should I become a sannyasi or not? If I stay still in my mind, this is not yet the right place. So remember, there are decisions that are taken with our heart, not with the mind. And they are the most important. Not necessarily because they give us rational answers to relevant situations of our life, but because they give us the vision, the trust, the understanding of who we are. In that realm of the heart, there is no such duality, doubts, hesitations as we know in the mind. And such decisions of the heart teach us something very important. Teach us how through imperfect existence we can and should find perfect existence. So how through imperfect existence we can and should find perfect existence. Because again, the main decision is to be present, no matter what. And thus, we also free ourselves from the idea of what others would want from us or would expect from us regarding our decisions and corresponding actions and so on. And we realize that truth of that saying, whether you think you can or think you can't, you are right. So whether you think you cannot or you think you can, you are right. But this is true when you believe your mind. When you just follow blindly your mind. You think you cannot, you're right. You think you can, you're right. But beyond this duality, there is this integration, which is much more important. Now, let's take a break for questions. If there are any questions, you can raise your hand. You may even want to share about the experiences in self-awareness you had in the last week. That tapas of being aware, passing the doorway, for example, or being aware of the breath. Yes, Remus.
Hi, Sahaja.
Hi, Remus.
I'd like to start with, I think it's not a question. You blocked me. Actually, you blocked my mind about decisions, because now I'm a little bit confused with the mind, I think. But I'll try to train my heart about decision. And because even now I'm in the moment, I have to take one decision, important decision, but I will practice. And I'm a little bit confused now.
Well, it's in the beginning, the confusion can be good because takes you out from the rational mind.
Yes.
But then it's a moment when we come to trust more the neutrality, the stillness, this meditative mood, the non-duality, to trust pure consciousness more than thoughts. Because usually a decision is taken only following the rational pros and cons, you know?
Yes.
Should I do this? But then if I do this, this will be the consequence, and so on and so on. But this is, as I said, it's a matter of a trust in oneness, not a trust in duality. This is the normal strategy of people. While in meditation, we learn, in meditation and through the spiritual life, we learn to affirm this, that wisdom and, you know, the wisdom of life is not just the witness of a philosophical understanding in meditation. The wisdom of life comes in that stillness. Then you start trusting that centeredness more than just your rational mind. And it's not that the rational mind shouldn't be used, but takes you out, the centeredness in the heart takes you out from this personal attachment to a situation or another. You act in freedom. And when you act in freedom, you may surprise others. Because otherwise, we are acting just in reactivity, in fear. What if I will do this, then what will happen and what will be the consequences? You know, it's just this sense of freedom. It's a sense of freedom, exactly as, you know, there is this advice that live your life that this day would be your last day. And you can learn this in this self-awareness. And you act with this presence and freedom, and then the clarity will come. So trust your heart, not in a blind way, not as an opposition to the mind, but as a way of zooming out, of understanding who you are in all this play of life. What is this decision about?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. My feeling now is it's about we'll be fine. We'll be fine. I don't know how, but we'll be fine. This is my feeling.
This is the most important feeling, you know, that yes, it's a trust. Behind everything is a trust, because this trust is the very secret message of the heart. This is when Suzuki said, enjoy your problems. No? Enjoy your problems is about this trust. And it's, I would love to share this to you, to make you really feel this, because this is so important. It's not just a story, it's not just imagination, it's not just positive thinking, it's a deep trust.
I'm feeling you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
About the tapas, I'm very happy, because now it's much better than last week. Now it's I'm more conscious, and when I'm passing through the door, and the feeling is that I'm passing through in the other world. When I'm passing to the door, I'm passing from here to another door. So I give the meaning about and yes, I remember about 70 or 80%. I remember when I'm passing to the door, and I will continue. Thank you so much.
Yes, this is very good, because we need to understand that we may say, yes, it's important to just learn about
the process.
You know, to be self-aware or to, but this requires also training of the mind. And this training of the mind, which is that first stage of, or the second stage, that connecting the mechanical gesture with the awareness, with the personal awareness, is very important. If this is missing, then the self-remembrance is not there. If you are remembering yourself, if you are present, you know, every day, every moment, you know, I'm in the present moment, this is perfect. But if you, for example, you go and walk on the street, and then after 5 minutes, you realize that you are just lost in thoughts or comparing what people are doing and comparing yourself with others, then again, you come into this self-inquiry. Who am I? And then you realize that again, this is lost. Then bring the attention to the breath. You start counting the breathing. No?
Yes.
Because it's obvious that the mind is taking you. So you come and start. Inhalation, exhalation, inhalation, exhalation. And counting from 1 till 7, then from 1 till 14, and so on. And if the attention is missing, again, you come from 1 till 7. Then when this is stabilized, while you are walking, looking, seeing, contemplating nature, it's a part there of attention there, and that a part involved in the process of counting the breath. So somehow self-reflecting, it's this part of self-reflection which is manifesting. Then you may start to take long pauses, longer pauses in the end of inhalation, in the end of exhalation. Short pauses or longer pauses, 1 second or so, in which you start acknowledging that third level, that stillness. And you stay in that, and again. And then when you lose this, again, you come to the counting, and again, and again, and again, and again. It's a matter of a training. And, you know, in the American patriotic movies, this is, you know, we see people from the Marines and from the army,
Yes,
who
yes.
are taking this strong training.
Yes.
No? This training, simply in spite of the challenges, brings a sense of trust. So all that training, all that difficult training, brings a stability. And with this, a trust is there.
Yes.
And this is how, through experience, people realize that it's not enough to say, well, I am loving my country. I am ready to give my life for my country. Everybody can say this, you know. It's easy to say this, I love my country. It's easy to say, I am Shiva. I am one with the divine. You need to be trained in that. Exactly as a Marine is trained, you know, and then in that difficulty, in that you, in spite of all these challenges, or because of all that challenge, you are able to constantly reaffirm and to stabilize yourself in that presence, then a little challenge is making you to smile, because you know there is a tremendous power there behind. And you saw this, it was actualized in so many situations. So in a similar way, in spirituality, saying I am Shiva or I am one, yes, I am one till the first meeting with my boss or with my lover and the first struggle. But then what? The training, you know, the training in self-awareness. It's a comparison which I hope will help us to understand that the determination and the perseverance is not about a fight or a struggle, but is a flow in this trust, a flow in this trust and remembrance. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much. I'll train more and more.
Good, very good. Yes. And another question from Tamara.
Hello, Sahaja. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, Tamara.
I'm so glad to be in your presence.
I'm also happy to hear your voice.
Is exactly the topic that probably was needed for me right now. So I felt that it's a right moment to ask you a question. As I see, when I'm very much in the presence, no matter what choice I'm doing, I'm happy and I'm there. But the process is going and mind is strong as well. So sometimes mind arrives and it brings me away from presence. And I see that some choices where everything is accepted inside of me, I'm able to relax, be fully trust and be present. But some, because of probably done of some my conditioning, because I should be good girl, or because so I have some responsibility as I think, or because I'm afraid to do bad to any other person, or I consider other people how they will feel, how they will behave, and then mind arrives. So I want to ask you, like, there is a way, and for sure when you clean up mind, you are fully present no matter where you are, no matter place, people, because you are actually one with everything. So there is nothing to accept. It's like everywhere you. But till you are not there, does it mean that it's better to choose roads where your mind is less, where you are more present, or is to work more on going deeper in full acceptance? So then the choice is not important. So I cannot measure which of these should take over. From another side, I feel like challenges that I have when mind is coming help me to clean it up. But does it mean that I should put myself in this condition, being farther from presence?
So again, who is making the choice? Who is making the choice? Now, all this, even this consideration about how to make the choices is made from the mind, is not made from that trust, from this being non-dual. So again, is irrelevant in the end what that choice would be. Just be present. Trust in that presence, and then have the courage to step, assuming your life, embracing your life. Because when you make a choice in fear, you are oscillating, you are half. But no matter what the choice is, it's like you are born again. You are born new. Now again you are born. Okay, you did a choice which took a decision which had some problematic consequences and so on. So what? In this humbleness of being, you are new. You are again new. All those consequences, all those problems, are not becoming a burden if you are not identifying with them. And of course, this doesn't mean to not to care, because you are doing out of your authenticity, with all your sincerity, with all your, it's about choosing trust, it's about choosing sincerity. Yes. So choose that aliveness, This is what I'm saying. And don't be afraid of making mistakes. It's not about making mistakes. Don't be afraid of making mistakes, because they are not mistakes. They are just ways in which you learn.
Yeah,
Enjoy your problems. Enjoy your problems. To feel joy in the heart when sorrow appears, as Rumi said. No? Enjoy. Trust this. When you trust this, there is no fear there.
Yeah, exactly. Probably many of those are exact fear, because you're afraid of something new. You know exactly how it is in the past and how it can be, but you do not know future. So I believe is exactly mind who are afraid of something new that is not known yet.
Yes, and this is no problem. This is also the fascination and the beauty of life. This is also an invitation in this freedom of existence. And enjoying this is so beautiful. No, it's the part of this playfulness, not the part of the controlling. It's like the child who plays. He doesn't need to know how would be the end of the play. When you dance, you don't need to know where exactly you'll be in the end of the dance in that room. No, you are just dancing, and it's just the joy of acting there. And then it's about this responsibility regarding others or ignoring others. Again, this centeredness doesn't mean ignoring others, because this centeredness is not about you, a personal you. It's not a selfish way of pretending I am spiritual or I am in a center and I don't care about this superficial things of life and so on. No, you are truthful with yourself, which means you are truthful with all that is. You embrace life, and there, I don't feel separate from you. When I'm saying this to you, it's like I feel one with you. It's not that this is my decision or this is my way of seeing things, and then maybe your way of seeing things is different and I don't care and I don't know what your decision will be there. It's like I feel in this sharing, I feel the oneness. I'm with you.
You mean being sincere with yourself? It means being responsible for everything, correct?
Exactly. Yes.
That is where it was a trouble. Because it seems like responsibility is, you can say, okay, I can move myself and I can accept other things, but it's not sincere, because inside of you there is a conflict, because it's not really how you feel it.
Yes, and you learn from all this, Tamara. You continue to learn. You continue to learn and to integrate. So don't be afraid of failures, or you continue to learn.
Thanks so much.
Yes.
Thank you, Sahaj.
Thank you, Tamara. So just come in the heart, me here now. What a miracle. And you can open the eyes. The same miracle of being. It can be associated with the awareness of the breath. Or hearing a subtle sound, maybe. But these are just means. They are just pointers to the moon. So while I will continue to speak, remember who is listening, who is the one who makes choices, and what a choice would mean. Another interesting way of learning how to dance in life would be to take the opposite viewpoint deliberately. So I'm going to speak about this next topic, which can help us to get rid of the attachment and the superficial grasp of our beliefs, identifications. And this method was suggested by Uspensky. I already mentioned sometimes about him. This great Russian esotericist, a disciple of Gurdjieff. He recommended, he said, it would be very good for some of you to deliberately argue against what you hold to be right and true and good. So deliberately argue against what you hold to be right and true and good. Try to take the opposite standpoint deliberately at times and see what happens to you. So see what happens to you. Play with yourself, with this personality. He said that sometimes the result was to make you doubt your own opinions, your own yes, and realize that there are other points of view to which you cannot say no, or others, in other words, you cannot integrate in your vision. So that approach may be also an interesting approach, and just denying it or refusing it or suppressing it, as we used to do, may not be the solution. So once at a meeting, he assumed the position of a man who was going to argue about everything that was said in the spiritual practice that was taught there, they name it the work. This practice of awareness was there, also an important element. And he started maintaining that it is not true. Many people in that meeting were startled and shocked. Actually, Uspensky confused only those people who had never really contemplated for themselves on these ideas and teachings involved in that spiritual work recommended there. It was a challenge only for those people who were taken those teachings in a kind of dogmatic or religious way, writing them in the notebooks or trying to remember them in their mind in a kind of mechanical way, without inquiring themselves, without allowing them to touch and stabilize them in their heart. So the effect on those who had done the practice of self-awareness and on those who already developed a steady presence was totally different. So even though he was just coming there and denying all that he used to say before, those people were not disturbed. Why? Because they were centered. Because they had included also this no side, this opposite perspective, and had come to that inner faith that could not be so easily shaken by doubts and contrary arguments. Such people had found their own perspective and their inner understanding, and they could already observe that incontestable effects of such a practice on themselves, in themselves. So here, I'm not speaking about questioning everything and remaining in just confusion or skepticism that is happening for many people, especially in our times. This is something that also is legitimate till a certain point. You should inquire your guru. You should not follow blindly what a teacher is saying. But here I'm referring to something more refined, more profound, is when you already embraced the teachings, but then you look at them not in that dogmatic way anymore. And then being stabilized closer to the center, you are not shaking. The shaking, the oscillating mood, the confusion, which is water characteristic, is in connection with Svatisthana, with the second chakra, is exactly about this social conformism or fashion, which, as Bernard Shaw said, is the induced epidemic. Fashion is an induced epidemic. And this oscillation is always something that is about moods, is not about that centeredness. If you really want to know the story of the ocean, learn the silence of its depth. Don't listen only to the waves. So if you want to learn the story of the ocean, learn the silence of its depth. Don't listen only to the waves. And you are the ocean. Waves are just the convenience of water. But water is not only waves. And this is also the for example, in Tibetan Buddhist monasteries, there was this art, and continues to be even now, this traditional art of debate. Sometimes there are periods of 1 month of debates. They are named Jang Gonchoe, in which people are simply learning this art of debating, not just for learning some arguments or how to present in a, or to learn to become smarter, but learning to see different perspectives, different points of view, and integrating them. We have to reach that phase in which we can be challenged, provoked, triggered, tested, contested, and still not losing the centeredness. It's exactly as I gave before, that example of the patriotic American movies in which the soldiers go through that tough training routine. Yes? You can easily say from the beginning, yes, I know I'm a spiritual person, or I am Shiva, but this is not enough. And we need to be challenged, because in this way, a maturity, a spiritual maturity comes there. And that's why assuming the opposite perspective is so freeing. You are not attached. As in the Zen tradition, it was said, if you meet the Buddha, kill the Buddha. Of course, this is not the only thing that you are supposed to do. No, this is not about following, this is the path, killing the Buddha, if you are a Zen monk. But it's about understanding that you don't need to just stay stuck in this. And there are countless examples. For example, in Pythagoras Initiation, in the ancient times, in the 6th century before Christ, the early Pythagorean school went through a 5-year initiation period in which they were supposed to listen to the teachings in complete silence. And there was also a moment in which, after a time in which everybody would agree with you and will welcome you in a friendly way in that place, which you can imagine that school as an ashram. Yes, so imagine everybody is friendly, a community that is very nice to you. You are accepted there. You are dedicated to this initiation, and then suddenly one day everybody turns against you. Of course, this comes after a time of stabilization, and then everybody turns against you, and all that you were learning there about that non-reactivity, about that stability, about that centeredness, now needs to be shown. Are you taken by those emotions or not? And that was a test, was a secret test in Pythagoras school, a test of admission. If you would run that test and you would pass that test of staying centered, you will continue to become a member of the inner circle. Otherwise, not. Of course, this created a lot of reactions. Actually, Pythagoras and many of the Pythagorean schools were killed because of the anger of some men who were excluded by in such initiations. They were just remaining in their aggressivity and their reactivity. But still, it's the beauty of understanding this stability there. And this is the same with many martyrs, for whom the challenge was the way of increasing their determination of being attuned with the truth. As I told you, in Romania, in the communist times, there were many Christian mystics who went in prison, and they were constantly praying, or others had to be they were forced to be in a complete isolation for 9 years or so. Complete isolation. And that was such a good training. And of course, this can be done in profane, in normal conditions, to be centered and committed to truth, to love, in the discussions with your boss at your job, or in discussions with your colleagues, or in discussions with your friends, or in discussion with your partner or lover, with your parents. So we are either consciously engaged in a process of transformation, in this inner revolution of self-awareness I'm speaking about, or just reacting to our stories and pride and reactivity and so on, and wanting to tell our opinions all the time and so on. Try to integrate all this. And then, instead of being lost in the frustration that comes from having your values rejected, or encountering basically a no to our spiritual ideas or aspirations, that energy is not going in the frustration anymore. So that energy, usually when you receive a no, or when you receive an attitude which, or a behave which is contrary with your opinions, a frustration comes. And many people, I met a lot of people who are just in this frustration, just in this, oh, but she's not right. And instead of being just there, if you learn to come back to that silence of the heart, a stronger confidence is brought by this very energy. So your boss said no to you. But that no, which in this phenomenal word of samsara is just a no, and then a reason for frustration, you take it with a smile. Because you are not just that situation. Because you know yourself, and because you know that beyond that circumstance, or higher than just that circumstance, there is the present moment. There is the vastness of life, in which you find, if you are following that truth, you know, it's just amplifying a confidence in you, that you know that the way in which you know that is correct will happen. Not out of a selfishness or a ego story or stubbornness, but all that no is emphasizing or reinforcing this commitment to the truth of the heart. This is what was happening with these people who, in the communist times, for example, were sent in jail to deny their spiritual beliefs and so on, no, and to be re-educated. This was a big concept there, no, to the or as in China is this the cultural revolution, no, to be re-educated. And you keep, of course, if you are just a robot, you are following no matter what it is said there, which is happening, unfortunately, for many people. But if this actuality of being, if the presence is there, you are just smiling inside. You know that all these challenges are just emphasizing, amplifying a tremendous trust, a stronger confidence is growing. So that energy of an external no doesn't project us in a personal reactive no, but reassesses the center. Reassesses the center. Again, that beautiful statement, enjoy your problems. It's like in these times, we can be lost in fears regarding future, frustrations, or keeping this centeredness of self-awareness. Any blockage, any no we meet in life doesn't create any more that contraction or confusion or that inner no, but a deeper trust. A deeper trust in yourself, in the present moment, not in yourself as a, oh, I'll make it as, you know, as an ego, but in that silent you. A deeper trust in that reality, which is not a personality, not a story. A deeper trust that life is not just about this personal story, but is about something higher than this. More embracing, not running from it, not as an escapism, but as an integration. But you come with the whole power of that. When you don't hold on your personal story, but you trust deeply the heart. What can possibly shake you? When you trust in your heart, what can possibly shake you? And again, this is not a radical, dedication in which you don't care, or you need to learn an extreme and say, oh, I cannot be like Sahaja. He's speaking about a trust I didn't understand or I never felt. You learn just a little bit. You start to be in touch with that, and then it's growing, and then it's growing and growing and growing and growing, and it's so freeing, all this process. So when I'm speaking about this, I'm not asking you just follow me no matter what, trust your heart and learn about this reality of your being. Learn about this secret of your being and about this alchemy, which Nietzsche was also mentioned. That which does not kill us makes us stronger. He said, that which doesn't kill us make us stronger. But that which kills us as egos reveals a greater power, the one of the center. And this is not possible unless we learn to merge together both yes and no parts of ourselves. These parts of I like this, I don't like that. And then out of this, revealing this yes and no together. Because when you zoom out and you look at your life, it's not about just a yes or a no in this extreme phenomenal things. It's just this beauty, like the clear blue sky that embraces everything. Therefore, if you have simply said yes to the spiritual journey without including the challenges and doubts of no, we may not be yet mature. We may be overwhelmed at a certain point by such a manifestation of no. And for example, the aggressive reaction of the sectarians is exactly a defense against any possible no they are actually afraid of, simply because that doubt was not integrated inside. So they want to repress others as a way of repressing their inner doubts. They act violently outside because of something unresolved inside. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any reason to blame others. You have your opinion, very good, but I know myself. The biggest and most terrifying witch was in the soul of the inquisitor. So hunting the witches, the biggest witch was in the soul of the inquisitor, not outside. This fear. So the idea is that as we go through this real spiritual journey, we cannot remain just in this stage of mama and papa taking care of us, but we have to undergo all our doubts, all our temptations of yes or no individually in connection with everything, with esoteric teachings and all the ideas behind it. So supposing that I'm saying, like Uspensky did in such a satsang, I don't believe in the efficiency of meditation. This self-inquiry, I came to this idea that it's not really important. It's much important to first have other things resolved in your life, and only after that, maybe. Or I don't know if Ramana Maharshi was true and he spoke about self-inquiry, or it is all actually a nonsense. I don't believe, I don't think so. What would you think? If I would say so, what would you think? How? So supposing I spend some time in bringing all sorts of arguments or doubts or views to undermine this idea of spiritual journey, how would you react? How would you react? So here I'm speaking about this need of developing a stability, a maturity, which comes while you are zooming up and integrating all this. On the other hand, in the beginning of the journey, there are a lot of naive questions, and I heard and I received during retreats a lot of naive doubts that come from people. And in such questions, things are said like this. How was possible for Ramana, realized being, to get cancer? Or why Milarepa eat meat from a hunted animal when he stayed 50 years in caves, but then it was a circumstance in which he ate meat? Or why Manandamayi accepted caste segregation in her ashram? Or why yogis are staying on tiger skins, meditating on tiger skins? No, not protecting the animals. Or maybe that tiger skin is from a dead tiger. But the best answer was given by Nisargadatta Maharaj when he was asked like this. He said something very funny. He said, because even the yogis get sometimes rheumatism. Why the yogis are staying on a tiger skin? Who cares? Even the yogis may get rheumatism. So it's a practicality in there, in that. If such question arise, we are still in that extreme of rationalism, criticism, the so-called goats. You know, in parapsychology, people are segregated in two groups. Goats, those who don't believe in paranormal phenomena, mysteries, and so on, and sheeps, those who are really believe in all this. These are like the extremes of the pendulum. But here, it's not about believing or not believing in a formal or rational way. It's not about naively embracing just what is said there, or denying, or just doubting why, or having our imagine a realized being shouldn't get cancer, or if realized being gets cancer, that what does it mean? Who cares? Who am I? That is the question. Remember that presence. And in that you realize that life flows. And that presence doesn't contradict the flow of life. But even such an answer will be limiting, because we are not supposed to give explanations to each and every doubt of our mind. Oh, actually self-realization can happen even when somebody has cancer. Ah, yes, I get it. Now I know. Ah, yes, it's true. I didn't know. Oh, it's not about this. It's not about this kind of understanding on this level of relativity. You realize that everything is about something else. And we may lose that when we just focus on, if somebody is spiritual, should be like this or should be like that, only with our projections. And when we don't have such projections, then it's freedom. You realize the relativity, as George Bernard Shaw had a very funny quote. He said, the fact that a believer, the positive thinking approach, man of this reactive yes, basically, the fact of that a believer is happier than a skeptic, so the man of reactive no. So again, the fact that a believer is happier than a skeptic is no more to the point that the fact that a drunken man is happier than a sober one. So it's not about this. It's not about this. It's not about positive thinking versus negative thinking, or yes, it's good to develop a positive attitude towards life, but not out of reactivity, but out of this trust and this flow of the heart, not just because this is good or healthy or so on. Otherwise, the practice becomes somehow greedy. It's a greediness. And I saw this greediness in many people. No? The practice is selfish and greedy. And when it is so, sooner or later we become disappointed. And doubts will continue to come because we lack this humbleness. We lack the heart. We lack the center. And we learn. We learn from all these disappointments. We learn to come back to the center. Because again and again, it's not that you lost your train. It's not that there is something that is wrong. You come back. You learn and you come back. Again and again. The center. Recently, while Dalai Lama was giving an initiation on Avalokiteshvara, which is the bodhisattva who embodies the compassion of all Buddhas. While speaking about entering that space of a mandala, a sacred space filled with deities and a sacred realm. So speaking about this work of tantric imagination, of going into that sacred realm, he stopped and took some time to drink his tea. And then he even emphasized this. with a remark for the doubting mind, saying something like, I am speaking about these sacred subtle realms, but look, I am attached to drinking this cup of tea. But in reality, this was such a beautiful way of expressing this naturalness, this beautiful integration of samsara and nirvana together, the phenomenal world and the freedom of being together. It's not about denying the world. It's not about denying that cup of tea while you are embracing the mandala of the deities of Avalokiteshvara. It's a subtle way. What he did was a subtle way of integrating in self-awareness both samsara and nirvana with this freedom of a child. But we need to develop this deep maturity, this spiritual common sense and humbleness to realize this with no pretense. Then the different thoughts, opinions will not shake us, but will make us smile and bring more confidence. Enjoy your problems. I would conclude with something which I wanted to read last satsang, a quote from Viveka Chudamani, a very renowned text of Adi Shankaracharya, this great master acharya of or teacher of non-duality, Shankara. And Viveka Chudamani means the crest jewel of discrimination, Viveka. So the importance of this discrimination, of this centeredness. And just a few words about the nature of Jivan Mukta, or a liberated in life person, a realized being. How this centeredness is there no matter what. This would be the characteristic of it. So Shankaracharya said, when things pleasant or painful present themselves, to remain unruffled, undisturbed in mind, in both cases, through the sameness of attitude, is a characteristic of a Jivan Mukta, of a liberated in life. She who feels just the same when her body is either worshipped by the good or tormented by the wicked is known as a Jivan Mukta, a liberated human being. While remembering this trust in the heart, me here now. What a miracle. Let's see each other and share this sense of oneness.